Hello, and welcome to today's National 8A Association webinar. I am Haley Bingham, Deputy Director with the National 8A Association. The National 8A Association is a nonprofit with a mission to provide education and guidance for all aspiring current and graduate 8As. We're also proud to work with all minority small businesses like our Hub Zone, veteran-owned, women-owned, JVs, as well as our agencies, large primes, and industry professionals. Before we begin, I'd like to note that this webinar is being recorded and all presentation materials will be posted on our website at the end of the day. If you would like to ask a question, please make sure you use the chat box and select everyone or email us at events@national8aassociation.org. Jumping into what all of you are here for, I'd like to introduce you to today's speaker, Tara Cannon, Product Marketing Manager at Deltek for the CostPoint product line. Tara has over 18 years of experience working for both small and large primes or large firms in the aerospace and defense industry, and is excited to be working, partnering with Deltek for this. Please join me in welcoming Tara as she dives into the essentials needed for success in government contracting. Welcome.
Thank you, Haley. Thanks for that great introduction. Thanks everyone for joining me here today. As Haley said, I work at Deltek now, and I started at Deltek about 3 years ago. But prior to that, all of my work has been done in aerospace and defense. I've worked for large contractors, then worked for very small contractor that then was acquired by a large contractor and held lots of different roles in between there, from business development and marketing to project management, all of those kinds of things. Especially at the small business, I felt like I had 5 different roles. So I'm sure you guys can relate. As we're getting into this presentation, I was really racking my brain in how I was going to provide you all the tools you needed to succeed in just 30 minutes. So I decided I'm not going to be able to do that. But what I want to do is give you a head start. So I've collected a lot of information, and it's really just the tip of the iceberg. I have a really comprehensive resources and references section at the end of the presentation, which, like Haley said, you'll be getting the presentation materials after this webinar today. So lots of great free guides, resources that I got my information from and that you can go take a look at as well. So today, a couple of the things we're going to be talking about, we're going to go through some of the top challenges for government contractors. I'd be interested to hear if you want to pop it in the chat if you're facing some of these challenges. Then introduction to the government contracting life cycle. This may be a refresher for some of you, but it will sort of help to frame some of the tips and tricks that I'm going to be providing you with. And then we'll talk about winning government contracting contracts and then successful execution of those contracts. And then, like I said, I have a lot of references and resources at the very beginning. And the first tip I would like to start you off with is take all the free help that you can get. I know the SBA and 8A have a lot of free resources that you can look at, but private industries do too. Companies that do solutions for government contractors like Deltek, we put out so much free information and guides that you basically just have to give us your email to get. So I would definitely look into some of those other ways to get your information because there's so much good information out there. So first thing, just to start to frame this conversation around how to um, make sure that you have the essentials for succeeding in government contracting. So the top 4 challenges that most government contractors have, and this is evidenced by a study. We do a survey called Clarity every year where we assess and survey government contractors just to see sort of what the health of the industry is. And then we share that information with you all. I also have that linked below. It's over 70 pages of great information on trends and market conditions for government contracting. And so based on that survey, these are the top 4 things that government contractors are struggling with. The first one is finding and winning government contracts. And there's 2 parts to that. Figuring out the government procurement cycle is an art in and of itself. And then right now, competition is just so steep. So there are really 2 elements to that. And then, of course, you're trying to, as you're executing those contracts, optimize and control your resource costs. Inflation, of course, it is starting to come down, but things are still really expensive. The job market is really tough. Resources are scarce. So contractors are just looking for ways to optimize the resources that they do have. And then you can't talk about government contracting without talking about compliance and audits. It's part of the game of being a government contractor. So a lot of companies do struggle with understanding how to do their audits with new requirements, especially around cybersecurity that they have to meet. They're definitely struggling with that. And then again, hiring skilled talent. Everybody's doing this. The government is having issues doing this. Private companies are having issues. It's just a really tough market across the board. So just a little recap on the government contracting lifecycle. Like I said, this is how I'm going to sort of frame the tips that I'm going to be giving you and some of the market information. Today, since we just have 30 minutes, I'm really going to focus on strategic sales planning and contract fulfillment and reporting. I do have some bonus content in the appendix section of this presentation that talks a little bit more on capture planning and award, proposal development, and then best practices in contract completion and renewal. So the biggest tip that I can give you is to do your research. The 4 areas when you're doing strategic sales planning that you really need to have under your belt are around government budgets and spending. If the government is not already spending money on something, then you're going to have a hard time finding a contract to do that work. Say you have an idea for the best product in the world that's going to be life-changing. If it's not in a funding line item, the odds of actually getting a contract to do that are very low, or they will take a super long time. So finding out what the government is spending money on and then matching the availability, the things that your company does great to what they're spending money on. Additionally, market conditions and trends. This could be just things generally in the economic conditions. Right now, a lot of things are going around in the world, and the US government, there's national security concerns, there's things around the labor market, there's supply chain issues. So that can really impact what the government is looking for, but how you can execute those contracts. Another thing that's becoming even more important is teaming and contract types. As some of you may be aware, the government has been exceeding their goals for small businesses, but the number of actual contract awards, their goals for revenue or for spending, I should say, but their actual contract awards are fewer and fewer each year. So I'll talk a little bit about why that is and how you can sort of get a jump on that and be in a good position to win some of those contracts. And then again, that government policies and compliance. Understanding those could mean the difference between failure to execute or even just to win a contract if you don't understand that and have the compliance protocols in place. So just to get you started on a few items around the federal budgets and spending. So for 2023, the government spent 1.7 billion and or trillion in discretionary spending. And what discretionary spending is it's not the mandatory spending, it's sort of the new things that they're spending money on each year. 201 billion of that went to small businesses, and even more next year is going to go to small businesses, and there's even more spending. The top buyers for small businesses over the last 4 years have been the Army, just defense in general. And why it just says defense is because the government has started the different departments, the Army, Air Force, Navy. They're doing contract vehicles where they can combine their buying power and get better rates on things. So that's sort of what that defense there stands for. And then the top set-asides are just general small business set-asides, and then A-days, service disabled veterans, and then the completed A-days. Some of the market conditions impacting government contractors include the budget uncertainty. As you know, the last couple of years, it's been pretty tricky because budgets are getting approved later and later. It's causing delays in contracts being let. And although the budgets have been very healthy, because they're healthy and because it's typically a stable source of funding when we're not under a continuing resolution, lots of businesses are flocking to government contracting. So there is more competition than ever before. So in addition, there's still issues around supply chain, especially supply chain cybersecurity. Workforce challenges remain issues. A lot of the government agencies are having attrition where folks are retiring and they're having to hire new folks to fill those seats, and they're not as experienced. So that how that might impact you is that your contracts are coming out and they're maybe not as well written, or they're taking longer to write because there's a lack of experience in those contracting organizations. So contractors have an opportunity there to start helping to fill some of those seats, but also in training new government workers. Cybersecurity is definitely at the top of the government's mind. If you've heard of the Cybersecurity Maturity Model certification, that has been ongoing for several years. Each year they think that it's going to get made into a law and something comes up and it hasn't. So latest news is yes, they're still planning that for 2024, but they said that in 2023. So no promises there. And then around digital transformation, the government is definitely getting on board with all the new technologies that the public sector is using. Artificial intelligence, moving to cloud. I know when I was working for the government contractor I did before coming to Deltec, we could not use any cloud applications because it was just not allowed. There was too much risk for data breaches. So everything we did had to live on the servers at our company. It was very limiting. And now the government is saying, wait a second, we can't afford to keep buying all of this equipment. We need to have a more sustainable model. We need to move to a cloud. We need to use software as a service offerings. So that also opens up that for government contractors. The government is looking into ways to make sure that their contractors and their own organizations are staying safe, but they're still able to take advantage of some of this great new technology like software as a service, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. So on top of all of those market conditions, small businesses have additional challenges. In our Clarity study, they're reporting that they have less growth than larger businesses, and they're reporting lower profit margins. A lot of them just don't have the capital to be able to put out for some of these resources because of inflation that they're going up, and they're more likely to be concerned over labor costs, costs of compliance, and just inflation overall, especially in capital funding and capital resources. And if you want to put, just before I forget, just so I can get my timing right, if you have questions, please stick them in the chat. So if I see that there's a lot of questions, I'll try and hurry up at the end and leave time to answer those. Any of them that I don't have time to answer, we will get back with you after the webinar. So I touched on this a little bit earlier around a trend to watch for GWACs and IDIQs. This goes back to the government creating these contract vehicles so they can get economies of scale and better pricing on resources that all of the departments need. This could be IT equipment. This could be, building and architecture. It could be paper products. It could be supplies. It could be people, like if they need people to run their IT or if they need folks to clean their halls. All of that stuff, all of the different departments use. So what the government is trying to do is save money by grouping departments together and buying those things in bulk. So that's good for the government. They're getting a better economies of scale, but it means that there's fewer contracts that are going out. So teaming is super important now, and finding good teaming partners. And small businesses are in a good position for this because a lot of that work is going to small businesses. So you have the opportunity to start looking for teaming partners that bring in that experience and expertise that maybe you don't have, and you can prime a contract, but still get that support and help that you need. So a few things that you can do to help with your strategic teaming and trying to overcome competition. The very first thing is understand requirements as early as possible in the procurement cycle. This also includes looking at who the incumbents are, looking at what the budgets are for particular needs, and looking at who the competition is. This will help you to strengthen your partnering and teaming. If you know who the incumbent is, you can decide, hey, do I want to go work with them? Or is there a better opportunity I should be working with this other company? This will also, by teaming, help you to expand your work into other agencies. If you're doing something really well for the Army, you've developed some amazing new communications equipment, and you think it would be super applicable to the Navy, but you don't know anyone in the Navy. When you're doing teaming, you can team with other companies that have experience in the agencies that you want to work in to help you get that foot in the door. So in deciding whether or not to prime or subcontract, that's super important. As an 8A, you all know that you have a lot of opportunities to prime because you're getting set aside money. So looking at who you can prime with and what they can bring to the table is, or who you can work with as a prime and they can subcontract and what they bring to the table. It's important that this division of labor is equitable and it plays on both of your strengths. Teaming agreements. There's all kinds of teaming agreements. I've linked some references below on best practices in teaming because that's basically an art in and of itself. And don't forget about subcontracting opportunities. The whole list of references that talk about how to find those, what work needs to be done, what are the top things that other prime contractors are looking for. So don't discount those. They're a great way to get some experience and past performance under your belt without having to carry the load of the whole contract yourself. So just a quick review on contract types. Depending on the type of work you're doing, you may encounter some of these or you may just kind of sit in one type of contract. So there are a couple different categories. So it's contract types around how something is priced, how something is delivered, and then how it's procured. So as far as how things are priced, the main categories of contract types are fixed price. So in fixed price, you're going to deliver a proposal and say, this is how much it's going to cost me to do this. And then you're held to that price. If in the end it costs you more than what you quoted, you guys are going to have to eat that cost, unless, of course, there's change orders. And that's a whole nother topic. But so fixed price, it's good on one side because you can kind of control your spending and control your profits, but you also are carrying the weight of being responsible to still be profitable and having to eat costs if you did not estimate correctly. So time and materials is sort of a combination of cost reimbursable and fixed price. The time part of it is considered fixed price. You submit an estimate of hours and a rate table with your contract. So you're charging them by the hour according to the rates that you've provided them. And then the materials portion of it is cost reimbursable. So the government is just reimbursing you for the cost of those materials. And then cost reimbursable or fully cost reimbursable contracts are where you're getting paid based on your costs. This cost reimbursable contracts are trickier because the government is basically asking for more oversight on this. Because they're paying you on your cost, they want to make sure that you're calculating those costs accurately and they're not paying for things that aren't their responsibility. So you have to be really careful about making sure you have very good documentation about segregating your costs. This is where indirect rates come in, overhead rates come in, and there's a lot of tracking and traceability that you need to have to do cost reimbursable contracts. A cost reimbursable contract is also likely to trigger a free award accounting systems audit, or it's also called an SF 1408. And this is where DCAA comes in and they audit your accounting system, which your accounting system isn't just your software that you use for accounting, it's your whole system, including the processes that you use for accounting, and they audit that to make sure that it meets requirements that the DCA puts out, and it meets, it's called an accounting system adequacy checklist. It's readily available online. So if you think you will be doing cost reimbursable contracts, I would highly encourage you to check out that adequacy checklist. IDIQs, we talked just a bit about how the government is doing these bigger IDIQ contracts. There's good and bad about IDIQs. The good thing is that once you've won the initial IDIQ vehicle, the process for bidding on task orders is typically not as involved, but getting that initial IDIQ, there's so much competition for that. So again, teaming is really comes into play with that, because typically the government will award the IDIQ to a set group of businesses. And then if you want to get in on the IDIQ work after that, you'll have to team with one of those businesses. As far as procurement types go, lots of different types of procurements, including full and open competition, sole source. Everybody wants to get a sole source. What they might not realize is that getting the sole source, all the work that you're putting into getting the designation as sole source, which means that you're doing requirements definition with the customer, you're doing a lot of shaping, all of that kind of stuff. That work sometimes is just as much as doing a procurement, but you're going in with less risk. So a few ways, when government contractors are looking at how they can optimize their business process, I know that when I was doing business development, I would spend hours and hours doing research. At the time, I was also a project manager, and so my time was billable. So the hours I spent doing market research that could have been billed to the customer, I'm sure resulted in us losing money, because I was spending my time doing research rather than doing billable work. So that's something I would definitely encourage you to do, is when you're doing tasks like research and manual administrative work, and you're also a billable person, looking at tools that can do some of that work for you. For instance, a market intelligence platform. Your time is money. And, when you initially see it, oh, I shouldn't pay for that. I have, I can do research on my own. Just think about the time that you would save, that you could do something else, hopefully something billable, and how those tools can sort of help you there. Okay, we're going to skip ahead to contract fulfillment and reporting. So you win your contract. Hopefully this isn't the first time that you're talking about how compliant your business systems are, but if not, then we definitely need to be talking about that. So there are multiple kinds of compliance that government contractors are need to follow. There's financial compliance like DCA audits. There's cloud and cybersecurity compliance like CMMC. If you're a manufacturer, you also have quality assurance requirements. Accounting system compliance can be for your actual accounting and timekeeping system, your cost estimating, purchasing, and government property, as well as material management and earned value management. If you ever heard someone ask if a contract is CAS covered, what CAS covered means is that you need to follow cost accounting standards, and they're very strict standards. Not all contracts will be CAS covered. CAS covered, usually there's a threshold of, if your company does about 15 million or more in revenue for the government, then you're probably going to start seeing CAS requirements in your contracts. Talked a minute about cost plus earlier, but cost plus, again, you're going to get a lot more oversight from the government on this. With other contracts, there's no sure thing that you're going to get audited for them. Cost plus contracts, you will get audited. Every year you have to submit an incurred cost submission, and it's audited by DCAA that basically outlines how you've calculated all your costs, so the government can make sure they're not being charged for anything that they're only being charged what's equivalent to the work on their contract. So that's super important. A lot of companies are a little leery to go into cost plus. There's benefits and drawbacks. The benefits are, in a market like today, getting your costs covered when you're not sure what inflation is going to do. This is definitely a security blanket, but you're also getting with that the extra surveillance from the government. Cybersecurity and compliance standards. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because it's a huge topic, but this is definitely a priority for the government. There's so much information out there on this, so I would encourage you to look it up to especially make sure that if you have this requirement, the DFARS requirement there in your contract clauses, then you need to be spun up on CMMC. CMMC is not something that you can get certified for overnight. So looking for this contract clause, this DFARS clause, is super important if you're doing work for the Department of Defense, because that's going to require you to get your IT systems in order very quickly. So going back to the topic of how you can make better use of your time is money. Not every small business is going to need an ERP system. It's a big purchase. It's a pretty robust system, but a few things you might want to look for, signs that maybe it is time for you to look into something more robust than maybe your, generic accounting system. You could be using QuickBooks. Sometimes QuickBooks is exactly what you need, but here are a few reasons that if you're facing these, then you may want to look at an ERP solution to help make the best use of your time as far as getting things done quicker, but also making sure that you're audit ready and not getting penalized for having audit findings. So if you have compliance requirements like CMMC, or you're doing cost plus contracts, that's a definite check mark that you might want to check out in ERP. If you're experiencing rapid growth, or you're preparing to acquire a company or be acquired, having a comprehensive system will a lot of times give the buyer those warm fuzzies that, hey, they know what they're doing. Their finances aren't going to be a mess that we're going to have to deal with after the acquisition. If you're having poor execution and win rates because you're not able to appropriately calculate your costs and you're either losing money or bidding too high and you aren't competitive, definitely looking into why are you calculating so high? How much extra work are you doing that you have to build in just to stay profitable? Keep going. I know we only have a couple minutes left. When you're looking for an ERP solution, I mentioned I work for Deltek's cost point product line. So I love talking about that. I'm not going to spend tons of time talking about that. But when you're looking for any business system, not just an ERP, if there's a system that's available that is meant for your industry, it's super important to look into that because you're going to be getting the tools and functionality that you need. It's not going to have all this extraneous functionality that might be good for another industry. It's going to make your implementation of the software easier because it's just the stuff you need. It's going to make the learning easier. And there's going to be a community of folks that other people that are using it are doing the same type of work that you're doing. Few audit readiness tips. Traceability is the big thing here. If you're going through an audit, even if you're not to the point of doing cost plus contracts yet, having your audits and traceability set up are super important. If you ever plan to do cost plus contracts, you need data and history to be able to even calculate rates. So there's never a bad time to start setting up your system so that you have that built-in traceability and historical data to be able to do more competitive proposals. And lastly, if you are attending the National 8A conference, the first week in February, Deltek will be there. I will be there. I am actually doing a Meet the Experts roundtable on Monday the 5th. I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to sign up for one of the spots to talk with me, or you're welcome to email me to set up a meetup. We can meet at our booth. It's 245. I would love to hear from you and talk more in detail about some of the topics that I covered today, and hopefully even share some more resources and help with you at that time. So yeah, and you're welcome. I think that if you for the National 8A sent out an email, at least I got one that said you could go sign up for the Meet the Experts time slots. So my name will be on there. You're welcome to sign up there. If it gets filled up, please just email me. My email address is just my name, no period, Tara Cannon at deltech.com. I would love to hear from you. And it looks like we don't have time for questions, but I will get back to you all at the end of the webinar if you did submit questions. So that's it for me. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Yeah, thank you everyone so much for joining us today for the webinar, and thank you, Tara, for such amazing information. I know the small business community really appreciates it. As a reminder, this webinar recording and presentation will be posted on our website by the end of the day. You'll also get an email post-event with these materials as well. We do have some additional resources, as Tara mentioned. We have our upcoming National Small Business Conference and awards gala at the beginning of February. We are almost sold out for both those events. So if you are planning to attend and have not purchased your tickets yet, make sure you get on that. And we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. And again, thank you all for joining us today. That concludes today's webinar, and we hope that you'll join us next month. Thanks again, Tara, and have a great day, everyone.